Full Stack Basics presents Master JavaScript. Unlock the power behind the frameworks.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to cover truth number 3.
You can write an entire app in JavaScript. You can't say the same for React without JavaScript.
So I have heard people say,
I am a React developer,
but don't even know what event target is. And if you don't, that's fine, there's no shame there. But if you don't, you are in the right place. Now, let me show you why you can't React your way out of a wet paper bag without knowing core JavaScript. Today, we're building the most basic feature every app has, a clickable button that updates the state in both vanilla JavaScript and React. And you'll see in real time that without JavaScript, React doesn't work.
This premium content is brought to you by Full Stack Basics JavaScript Bundle. Create a full stack Kanban board prototype with Vanilla.js and the Gem stack, including registration, login, and drag and drop functionality without libraries. Next, create a production-ready Kanban board with the Mern stack, including Google single sign-on and drag and drop. Learn more at fullstackbasics.io/projects.
I want you to open your DevTruths app that we created with vanilla JavaScript because we're going to work on it a bit more. Then I want you to open your style.css and scroll to the very bottom of the file. I want you to include styling for the button like so. So please pause and implement this. And then I'm going to scroll a little more just so that you can see clearly. And I want you to please include styling for an H2 like so. So please pause and implement. With this done, we're going to jump back to index.html and we are going to include a title and a button, which we're going to include right above this H1 here that reads DevTruths vanilla JavaScript first. So I'm going to include the code here. As you can see, it's simply an H1 that reads click counter vanilla JavaScript, then a button with the ID click-btn that reads click me, and then a simple H2 with the ID of count display that simply reads you've clicked 0 times. Please pause, implement this, and then open this up with Live Server just so that we can see what we have included. In the browser, you see the button, the styling picked up nicely, and you see that you have clicked this 0 times. Right now, there's nobody listening for the event in which we are clicking the button. So let's go ahead and take care of that. To take care of this, I'm going to close out of these two files and open app.js. I'm going to minimize the DevTruths here and the for each for the DevTruths here, just so that everything is a little cleaner for us. And the first thing we want is to initialize a count to 0, like so. So please pause and implement this. Then we need control over two things. We need control over the button with the ID click-btn, and we also need control over the H2 with the ID of count display. Please pause and implement this. Next thing we want to do is add an event listener for the button. And what are we listening for? We're listening for the event in which the user clicks the button. And then what do we want to do when the user clicks the button? Well, we are going to call an anonymous arrow function like so. So put the word async, then a set of brackets, then the little arrow, which is nothing but the equal sign and this chevron here. Then I'm going to include a set of curly braces and open things up. Please pause and implement this. So what do we want to do when somebody clicks the button? First, I want to update the count by 1. So it starts at 0, and every time somebody clicks, it just keeps adding to it. And then I want to display an updated text in this display, which is the H2, and I want to change the text content for you have clicked with the actual amount of times that the person has clicked. So please pause and implement your event listener. Now we can actually run this in live server and see for ourselves. As you can see here in the browser, we can click 1, 2, 3, infinite amount of times, and it actually persists. So what happened here? Well, first of all, you used 0 frameworks. You simply used DOM APIs and a simple event listener, and you made it work. And this is raw JavaScript power. Now let's do it in React. So for this, I want you to please open the DevTruths React app that we created in the previous episode. And we're going to go straight to source app.jsx because we are going to use this use state hook. But what is use state? Well, think of it like a sticky note for your app. You write something on it, and then React keeps track of it for you. And if you change it, React updates the screen. And we're going to see this in action. Is going to be a lot of fun. So now that we know what this use state is, let's go ahead and use it to keep track of the count. So here in the function app, we are going to include something that is called in React a state variable. And this state variable is going to be called count. Now, the difference here is that we're using use state to start the count at 0. But then we also want to set the new count every time the button is clicked, and then use state is going to keep track of it for us. Please pause and implement. Now that we have our state variable, let's go ahead and update our JSX, because here in the div with class name app, we want to include the H1 with the title click counter -react. We want the button click me, and we also want the H2 you have clicked X times, right? So please go ahead and implement this code snippet. Now I'm going to open my terminal and run my server. Remember, it's npm run dev to run the server, and then it is Control C, C as in Charlie, to stop it. So let's run our server and meet me over at the browser. Over at the browser, we see the button and we see the message. However, if we go back to the code, there is absolutely nothing handling the click of the button. Now, the cool thing here is that React abstracts this beautifully in a property that is called onClick. And you can simply include onClick =, and then curly braces. And inside of the curly braces, you can decide what you want for it to happen when this is clicked. So what I'm going to do here very quickly is that right under the state variable, but above the return statement, I am going to include a very simple function. And this function is called handleClick. It's asynchronous, and as you can see, what it does is that it stores the new count and it increments the count state variable by 1 every time the button is clicked. And then it sets this state count to the new count. All we have to do now is simply call this handleClick function here every time that this is clicked. Please pause and implement. Now that this is implemented, all that's going to happen is that we're going to display the count that we have in the state of the application. So perfect. Now go ahead and run your server and meet me over at the browser. Over at the browser, everything works, and our state variable, with the help of the useState hook, is able to actually keep track of how many times we have clicked the button. Of course, when we refresh, it restarts. So what have we learned so far? In comparison to the vanilla JavaScript solution, React looks easier because React gives us the useState variable, and this gives us that illusion of simplicity because we have the code snippet and the JavaScript logic in one single file. But guess what? If you don't understand the event handlers and the variables in vanilla JavaScript, you could be stuck. Remember, React is a shortcut, but it only works if you know what happens behind the scenes. And coming up next, we are going to build a simple single-page navigation with vanilla JavaScript, and then of course, we're going to show you how that works with React Router.